A 16-year-old black girl walking down the hallway of her predominantly white high school, her beautifully braided hair catching the fluorescent lights like a crown. Three classmates approach with plastic bottles hidden behind their backs, their eyes gleaming with malicious intent. They think they see an easy target, a quiet transfer student who keeps to herself, someone they can humiliate without consequence. They have no idea they're about to discover why the quiet ones are often the most dangerous. Her name is Maya Thompson. And for 8 years, she has been perfecting an art that transforms vulnerability into power, fear into focus, and pain into precision. While her classmates saw only a soft-spoken girl who loved books and avoided confrontation, Maya had been training in the ancient discipline of karate, learning not just how to fight, but how to find unshakable strength within herself. The moment they pour bleach on her carefully braided hair, a chemical assault designed to destroy not just her appearance, but her cultural identity, they think they've won. They expect tears, humiliation, maybe a transfer to another school where she can disappear quietly. What they get instead is a revelation that will change everything. Sometimes the person you think is weakest is actually the one who's been preparing her whole life for exactly this moment. This is more than a story about bullying. It's about the 67% of black students who face hair discrimination in schools, about the systematic targeting of black girls' cultural expression, and about what happens when resilience meets opportunity. It's about the power of preparation, the strength found in community, and the moment when silence transforms into an unmistakable voice. Most importantly, it's about understanding that behind every quiet student might be someone extraordinary, waiting for the right moment to show the world exactly what they're made of. Maya Thompson's journey began in the heart of Detroit, where her grandmother, Ruby Thompson, had raised 5 children as a single mother while working double shifts at the Ford plant. Ruby understood that survival meant being twice as good, twice as strong, and twice as prepared as anyone expected you to be. She passed these lessons down to Maya's mother, Dr. Angela Thompson, who became the first person in their family to attend college, eventually earning her doctorate in education and becoming a high school principal. Growing up in Detroit's Corktown neighborhood, Maya learned early that strength came in many forms. Her mother's strength was intellectual, breaking barriers in academic spaces where black women were rare. Her grandmother's strength was endurance, maintaining dignity while working jobs that barely paid enough to survive. But Maya would discover her own unique form of strength in the most unexpected place, a small karate dojo tucked between a laundromat and a corner store on Michigan Avenue. She was 8 years old when her older cousin Marcus, tired of watching her get picked on by neighborhood kids, dragged her to meet Sensei Williams. James Williams was a Vietnam veteran who had found peace through martial arts after returning from a war that changed him forever. His dojo, Warrior Spirit, served the community's children regardless of their ability to pay, understanding that some battles required preparation that went far deeper than physical techniques. Karate isn't about fighting, Sensei Williams told young Maya during her first lesson. It's about understanding that true power comes from within, and that the strongest warriors are often the ones who never have to prove it. For 8 years, Maya trained with religious devotion, while her classmates spent afternoons watching television or playing video games. She was in the dojo learning forms, practicing breathing techniques and absorbing lessons about discipline, respect, and inner strength. She competed in regional tournaments, earning trophies and belts that she kept private, never boasting about her achievements or letting schoolmates know about her secret life as a martial artist. The move to Westfield, Massachusetts, came when Dr. Thompson accepted a position as superintendent of schools, seeking better opportunities and what she hoped would be a more progressive environment for her daughter. Westfield High School boasted impressive statistics, high test scores, college acceptance rates, and a reputation for academic excellence. What the brochures didn't mention was that in a student body of 1,400 students, fewer than 80 were black, and Maya would be one of only 15 black girls in the entire school. The 2019 school year brought particular challenges for students of color. While the nation grappled with increasing racial tensions and growing white nationalist movements, schools like Westfield existed in a bubble of privilege denial. Parents and administrators spoke about colorblind policies while implementing discipline systems that disproportionately targeted black students. They celebrated diversity in their marketing materials while maintaining cultures that made students of color feel unwelcome, unwanted, and unsafe. For black girls like Maya, this environment was especially hostile. Research shows that black girls face unique forms of discrimination that target their appearance, behavior, and cultural expression. Their natural hair becomes a particular battleground simultaneously fetishized, as exotic and criticized as unprofessional or distracting. They face adultification bias, where adults perceive them as older and more mature than their white peers, leading to harsher punishments for identical behaviors. Maya experienced these microaggressions daily during her first semester at Westfield. Hi. Teachers mispronounced her name despite her gentle corrections. Classmates touched her hair without permission, asked if it was real, and made comments about its texture. Security guards followed her through hallways while ignoring white. Students engaged in identical behaviors. She was dress-coded for wearing the same styles that white girls wore without consequence. But Maya had been prepared for this. 8 years of martial arts training had taught her more than physical techniques. It had given her mental discipline, emotional control, and the understanding that true strength often required strategic patience. She absorbed each insult, each microaggression, each moment of discrimination while maintaining her grades, her composure, and her secret training regimen. Her attackers would soon learn that they had mistaken patience for weakness, quiet strength for vulnerability, and strategic silence for an inability to respond. They were about to discover that the girl they thought they could destroy had been preparing her entire life for exactly this kind of battle. The morning of October 15th, 2019 began like any other for Maya Thompson. She arrived at Westfield High. School at 7:30 a.m., her hair freshly braided in an intricate pattern that incorporated small golden threads, a style her grandmother had taught her that connected 4 generations of Thompson women. The braids took 3 hours to complete and represented not just beauty, but cultural pride, family tradition, and personal identity. Maya's first 2 classes proceeded normally. She sat in the front row of her advanced placement literature class, participated thoughtfully in discussions, and took detailed notes. But she could feel the familiar weight of being observed, studied, and silently judged by classmates who seemed to view her presence as both curiosity and threat. The attack came during the transition between 3rd and 4th periods, when the hallways filled with 1,400 students moving between classes. This timing was not accidental. Jessica Martin, Brittany Walsh, and Chloe Peterson had been planning their assault for weeks, waiting for the perfect moment when maximum humiliation could be achieved with minimal adult supervision. Jessica, the ringleader, was junior class president and captain of the field hockey team. Her father was a prominent local attorney. Her mother served on the school board, and her family's donations had funded the new gymnasium. This social capital gave Jessica power she wielded carelessly, targeting anyone who threatened her sense of superiority or made her uncomfortable in ways she couldn't articulate. The plan was as cruel as it was calculated. They had purchased industrial-strength bleach from a janitorial supply store, tested it on hair samples to ensure maximum damage, and decanted it into sports drink bottles to avoid detection. They had studied Maya's schedule, identified the optimal location for their attack, and recruited Chloe to record the incident for later social media posting. Maya was walking toward her AP chemistry class, reviewing notes for that day's lab experiment, when Jessica approached from behind with false friendliness. "Maya, I love what you've done with your hair today," Jessica called out, her voice carrying the sweet tone that always preceded her cruelest moments. As Maya turned to respond, confused by the uncharacteristic compliment, Brittany and Chloe flanked her on either side. The hallway was crowded enough to provide cover, but clear enough to ensure maximum visibility for their planned humiliation. "Actually," Jessica continued, pulling the bottle from behind her back, "I think it could use some ... highlighting." Before Maya could process what was happening, Jessica appended the bottle directly onto her braids. The bleach cascaded through her carefully woven hair, soaking her scalp, running down her face and neck, and splashing onto her clothing. The chemical smell was immediate and overwhelming, sharp, burning, toxic. Students nearby jumped back, some laughing nervously, others gasping in genuine shock. Chloe held up her phone, recording Maya's reaction for the viral video they planned to create. Someone in the crowd shouted, "World Star!" as if this were entertainment rather than assault. Physical pain hit immediately. Bleach on skin burns, and Maya could feel her scalp beginning to sting and then burn as the industrial-strength chemical began its destructive work. Her eyes watered from the fumes, her throat constricted from the smell, and she could taste the acrid chemical on her lips where it had splashed. But worse than the physical pain was the psychological assault. This wasn't random violence. It was a targeted attack on her cultural identity, her family traditions, her connection to generations of black women who had worn their hair as a crown of pride. The braids that connected her to her grandmother, that represented hours of bonding with her mother, that symbolized her heritage and her beauty, were being destroyed by hatred distilled into liquid form. For a moment that felt like hours, Maya stood frozen in the hallway as bleach dripped from her hair onto the linoleum floor. The crowd of students formed a circle around her, some recording, others laughing, a few looking genuinely horrified. Teachers were still in their classrooms, unaware that a chemical assault was occurring just outside their doors. This was the moment that would define everything that followed when Maya had to choose between collapse and resistance, between the victim role her attackers expected and the warrior response her 8 years of training had prepared her for. Later, she would remember Sensei Williams's words, "A true martial artist's greatest victory is not in defeating an opponent, but in refusing to be defeated by circumstances." She would remember her grandmother's stories about maintaining dignity in the face of workplace discrimination, her mother's accounts of breaking barriers in educational leadership, and her family's multi-generational lesson that strength was not the absence of pain, but the transformation of pain into power. And in that moment, surrounded by her tormentors and their audience of classmates with phones raised to capture her humiliation, Maya Thompson made a decision that would change everything. She did not cry. She did not scream. She did not run to the bathroom to assess the damage or to the nurse's office to report the assault. Instead, she stood perfectly still, controlled her breathing as she had been taught for 8 years, and looked directly at Jessica Martin with eyes that held no fear, no shame, and no surrender. "Thank you," she said quietly, her voice carrying clearly through the suddenly silent hallway. "You just showed everyone exactly who you really are." The words confused Jessica, who had been expecting tears, panic, or angry retaliation that would allow her to play victim. Instead, Maya reached into her backpack, pulled out a hair tie, and gathered her bleach-damaged braids into a ponytail. With movements so controlled and deliberate that they seemed choreographed, she walked calmly to the nearest water fountain, rinsed the bleach from her face and hands, and continued to her chemistry class as if nothing had happened. Behind her, she left her attackers, and their audience wondering what they had just witnessed. Not the breakdown of a victim, but the emergence of someone they had seriously underestimated. As Maya took her seat in chemistry class, the bleach still burning her scalp and the smell still overwhelming her senses, she began planning her response. The physical assault would require medical attention, police reports, and legal action. But more importantly, Maya now had something she had never had before: the moral authority that comes with being victimized, the community attention that follows viral footage, and the perfect opportunity to show Westfield High School exactly who they had been dismissing. That afternoon, she would go to the hospital for treatment of chemical burns. That evening, she would file criminal charges for assault and hate crimes. That week, she would meet with civil rights attorneys and federal investigators. But first, she had a talent show to prepare for. And after 8 years of training in secret, Maya Thompson was finally ready to show her school what a real warrior looked like. The week following the Bleach attack revealed the true character of Westfield High School's administration and community. Despite clear video evidence, multiple witnesses, and visible chemical burns on Maya's scalp and neck, the institutional response was a masterclass in protecting perpetrators while abandoning victims. Principal Robert Henley called it an unfortunate misunderstanding between students and suggested that all parties involved needed to learn from this experience. When Dr. Angela Thompson arrived at the school demanding immediate action, she was told that the administration needed to hear all sides before making any decisions. Jessica, Brittany, and Chloe remained in classes while Maya was encouraged to take some time to heal at home. The message was unmistakable. The victim of chemical assault was being removed from school, while her attackers faced no consequences. It was a dynamic Dr. Thompson recognized from decades in education. The way predominantly white institutions consistently found methods to protect white students while marginalizing their black victims. This is exactly how systemic racism operates. Dr. Thompson told Maya as they sat in the dermatologist's office, getting treatment for the chemical burns that would leave permanent scarring on her scalp. They make the problem, you disappear, so they don't have to address the real issue. They hope you'll transfer schools, stay quiet, let them pretend this never happened. But the Thompson family had not navigated 3 generations of institutional barriers by disappearing quietly. Dr. Thompson immediately contacted the Massachusetts Attorney General's Civil Rights Division, the FBI's Boston Field Office, and the Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights. She hired the state's most prominent civil rights attorney and began documenting everything: medical records, school communications, witness statements, and the viral video that was spreading across social media platforms. The video's circulation created complex dynamics. While it generated widespread support for Maya, it also attracted attention from white supremacist groups who celebrated the attack and called for similar assaults on other black students. The family began receiving death threats through social media, anonymous phone calls, and packages mailed to their home. They were forced to hire private security and temporarily relocate to a hotel while police investigated the threats. For Maya, the aftermath was psychologically devastating in ways the physical attack had not been. The chemical burns would heal within weeks, but the institutional betrayal, the community victim blaming, and the realization that her suffering had become entertainment for some people created trauma that went far deeper than damaged hair. She experienced panic attacks, particularly in crowded spaces where she felt watched and judged. Sleep became elusive as she replayed the assault and imagined future attacks. Her grades, previously excellent, began declining as concentration became impossible. The confident young woman who had entered Westfield High School just 2 months earlier seemed to have disappeared along with her damaged braids. But alongside the trauma, something else was developing: fierce determination that had been dormant during her months of trying to fit into a hostile environment. The attack had eliminated her illusions about being accepted through achievement, kindness, or quiet accommodation. Now she understood what Sensei Williams had tried to teach her. Sometimes survival requires not just endurance, but demonstration of strength that cannot be dismissed or ignored. Sensei Williams noticed the transformation immediately when Maya returned to training. The careful student who had always held back, who had been gentle with sparring partners, who had apologized for landing clean techniques, was gone. In her place was someone harder, more focused, and absolutely determined to prove that she was not the victim everyone expected her to be. "You are different now," Sensei Williams observed after a particularly intense training session. "The attack awakened something in you that was always there." "They wanted to destroy me," Maya replied, her voice steady but intense. "Instead, they showed me exactly what I'm capable of becoming." The school's annual talent show became her obsession. Every afternoon, she spent hours in the dojo perfecting a kata routine that would showcase 8 years of training in a single, powerful performance. She worked on her mental game, her breathing control, her ability to maintain focus under pressure. Most importantly, she practiced projecting calm authority while experiencing internal rage, skill that would be essential when facing an audience that included her. Attackers. Her family was conflicted about the plan. Dr. Thompson worried that public performance would make Maya an even bigger target for retaliation. Her cousin Marcus, now a junior at Michigan State University, flew to Massachusetts to try talking his sister out of what he saw as dangerous provocation. But her grandmother, Ruby, now 82 and sharper than ever, understood exactly what Maya was planning. "Baby girl," Ruby said during one of their long phone conversations, "there comes a time when being quiet stops protecting you and starts limiting you. You've been quiet your whole life, trying to make other people comfortable with your existence. Maybe it's time to make them uncomfortable with their ignorance instead." Strategic support emerged from unexpected places. Other black families in the district began sharing their own stories of discrimination and offering assistance. The local NAACP chapter provided legal guidance and media training. The dojo community pledged to attend the talent show en masse, transforming what was supposed to be a high school performance into a demonstration of community solidarity. But there was also significant pushback. Anonymous social media accounts posted Maya's personal information and called for her expulsion as a troublemaker. Local news coverage consistently framed the story as tensions between students, rather than recognizing it as clear racial assault. Some white parents complained that the incident was being blown out of proportion and that Maya was seeking attention. 2 days before the talent show, Principal Henley made a final attempt to silence Maya. He called her into his office and offered a deal. If Maya agreed not to perform and to transfer to another district, the school would provide exemplary recommendations and ensure her attackers received appropriate consequences in private. Maya's response was polite but unequivocal. "Thank you for the offer, but I think I'll stay. And I think you'll want to see what I've prepared for Friday night." As she walked out of the principal's office, Maya felt the last of her fear transform into anticipation. She had spent 16 years learning to navigate a world that demanded she be smaller, quieter, and less threatening. The Bleach attack had burned away her willingness to accommodate that world's comfort with her oppression. Friday night, Westfield High School would see exactly what they had been trying to contain. Friday evening, November 8, 2019, Westfield High School's auditorium filled with an audience unlike any in the school's 70-year history. Word about Maya's planned performance had spread throughout western Massachusetts, drawing not just students and families, but civil rights activists, martial arts practitioners, local media, and supporters from across New England. The 800-seat Auditorium was packed beyond fire code capacity, with overflow crowds watching live streams in the cafeteria, and Gymnasium. Principal Henley had attempted to cancel the event, citing security concerns and potential for disruption. When attorneys from the Massachusetts Attorney General's office pointed out that cancellation would constitute illegal retaliation against a hate crime victim, the administration reluctantly allowed the show to proceed with a security presence. That felt more like intimidation than protection. Jessica Martin and her co-conspirators sat in the third row, having been explicitly ordered by their attorneys to attend. Their parents' lawyers had advised that any appearance of avoiding Maya would be interpreted as admission of guilt in the pending criminal and civil cases. So they sat there, projecting false confidence while understanding that this evening would determine whether they faced minor school discipline or serious legal consequences. The talent show's first half preceded normally student musicians, dancers, and comedians performing for the usual mix of enthusiastic and restless audience members. But as intermission ended and Maya's performance slot approached, the energy in the room shifted dramatically. Conversations ceased, phones emerged to record, and everyone leaned forward in anticipation of something unprecedented. Sensei Williams sat in the front row wearing his formal black GI, flanked by 24 students and parents from Warrior Spirit Dojo. Dr. Thompson sat nearby with extended family who had driven from Detroit, Austin, and New York for the evening. Local news crews had positioned cameras despite administrative objections. This was no longer a high school talent show. It was a moment of reckoning that an entire region had come to witness. When Maya's name was announced, the auditorium fell into complete silence. She walked onto the stage wearing a pristine white GI, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail that revealed the still visible scars from the chemical burns. She moved with the fluid confidence of someone completely at peace with her purpose and her power. "Good evening," she said into the microphone, her voice clear and strong enough to fill the space without amplification. "My name is Maya Thompson, and tonight I'd like to share something important with all of you." She stepped away from the microphone and moved to center stage. Without further introduction, she began the kata she had been perfecting for weeks. Complex sequence of movements drawn from 8 years of training in strikes, blocks, kicks, and defensive techniques. Every movement was precise, powerful, and beautiful, combining the practical effectiveness of martial arts with the artistic expression of controlled violence transformed into dance. The audience watched in stunned silence as the quiet transfer. Student they thought they knew revealed herself to be a martial arts expert of extraordinary skill and dedication. Her techniques were flawless, her focus absolute, her presence commanding. This was not the timid victim that Westfield High School had tried to dismiss. This was a warrior who had been training in secret while they underestimated her potential. As the kata progressed, Maya's movements became more dynamic and complex. High kicks that snapped with precision, spinning techniques that demonstrated perfect balance, jumping strikes that showcased explosive power. Each technique was executed with the kind of skill that takes years to develop and lifetimes to master. But the most powerful moment came when Maya paused in the center of the stage and spoke directly to her attackers. "Karate taught me that true. Strength doesn't come from hurting others. It comes from protecting yourself and those who cannot protect themselves. It taught me that respect is earned through character, not cruelty. And it taught me that sometimes the people you think are weakest are actually the ones who've been preparing their whole lives for moments exactly like this." The final sequence of the kata was breathtaking, a series of combinations that flowed from defensive movements into offensive techniques, demonstrating not just skill, but the philosophical foundation of martial arts. Strength used only when necessary, power controlled by wisdom, and the understanding that true victory comes from refusing to be defeated rather than defeating others. When Maya finished in the traditional ready position, the auditorium erupted in applause that lasted nearly 10 minutes. But she wasn't finished. As the applause subsided, she returned to the microphone with words that no one had expected, but everyone needed to hear. 3 weeks ago, some of my classmates poured bleach on my hair because they thought my culture, my heritage, and my identity were things they could destroy, she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the space. They were wrong. You cannot destroy someone who knows who they are. You cannot break someone who has spent years building unbreakable strength. And you cannot silence someone who has finally found her voice. A standing ovation that followed was not just appreciation for a performance, it was a community's acknowledgement that they had witnessed something transformative, something that would change how they understood strength, resilience, and the power of refusing to be anyone other than exactly who you are. The aftermath of Maya Thompson's talent show performance created ripple effects that extended far beyond Westfield High School, transforming conversations about bullying, racism, and empowerment across the nation. The video of Maya's performance accumulated over 10 million views within the first week. But unlike typical viral content that generates brief attention before disappearing, her demonstration of skill, dignity, and controlled power sparked sustained dialogue. Martial arts schools nationwide reported dramatic increases in enrollment from young black women inspired by her example. Self-defense programs specifically designed for students of color emerged in dozens of cities. Most significantly, conversations about bullying shifted from abstract discussions to concrete examples of what preparation and resilience could accomplish. The legal consequences for Jessica, Brittany, and Chloe were swift and comprehensive. Faced with overwhelming evidence, federal hate crime charges, and a victim who refused to be intimidated into silence, all three accepted plea agreements. Jessica, as the primary perpetrator, received 6 months in juvenile detention, followed by 3 years of probation, 1,000 hours of community service at a multicultural center, and mandatory cultural sensitivity counseling. Brittany and Chloe received similar sentences with additional requirements for restorative justice meetings with Maya and her family. More importantly, their actions triggered a federal civil rights investigation of Westfield High School's discriminatory practices and failure to protect students of color. The Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights documented systematic violations of Title VI, resulting in court-ordered diversity training for all staff, complete revision of disciplinary policies, and ongoing federal oversight. Principal Henley was terminated, and several teachers who had ignored or minimized racist incidents faced professional sanctions. The civil lawsuit filed by the Thompson family resulted in a $3.2 million settlement that funded the establishment of the Maya Thompson Center for Student Empowerment. The center provides martial arts training, legal advocacy, and educational support for students experiencing racial bullying or discrimination. Within 3 years, the center had expanded to serve students in 18 states, with particular focus on empowering young black women to develop both physical and emotional resilience. Maya's personal transformation was equally remarkable. The shy transfer student who had tried to remain invisible became a powerful advocate for student rights and anti-discrimination initiatives. She testified before state legislatures about the need for stronger hate crime protections, spoke at national conferences about the intersection of racism and school safety, and worked with the Crown Coalition to support federal legislation prohibiting hair discrimination. Her academic recovery was swift and decisive. Despite the trauma of the attack and its aftermath, Maya graduated as Westfield High School's valedictorian and received full scholarships to 23 universities. She chose to attend Harvard University, where she studied psychology and public policy while continuing her martial arts training and expanding her advocacy work. The broader cultural impact extended to policy changes at multiple levels of government. Maya's testimony was instrumental in Massachusetts, passing enhanced hate, crime legislation and federal funding increases for anti-bullying programs that specifically address racial harassment. The video of her performance became a training tool for educators, law enforcement, and civil rights advocates working to understand how individual resilience can catalyze systemic change. Perhaps most significantly, Maya's story helped shift national conversations about bullying from individual incidents to recognition of systematic patterns. Her experience demonstrated how racist bullying targets not just individuals, but entire communities, how institutional responses often perpetuate rather than address discrimination, and how survivors can transform personal trauma into broader social transformation. 5 years after the Bleach attack, Maya returned to Westfield High School as the keynote speaker for their inaugural Equity and Justice Week. The auditorium where she had once demonstrated her martial arts skills was now filled with students from dozens of racial and ethnic backgrounds, reflecting demographic changes that resulted from the federal intervention her case had triggered. Standing at the same podium where she had once confronted her attackers, Maya spoke to a new generation of students about the power of preparation, the importance of community support, and the understanding that individual strength can create collective change. They tried to pour bleach on my crown to make me disappear, she told the audience, her natural hair now grown into a beautiful afro that caught the stage lights. Instead, they helped me discover that I was already exactly who I was supposed to be. They thought they could break my spirit, but they only revealed how unbreakable it was. And most importantly, they tried to silence my voice, but they only helped me understand how powerful it could be when I finally decided to use it. The standing ovation lasted 15 minutes, one for each year, since she had begun the training that prepared her for a moment she never could have anticipated. Today, when we discuss school safety and anti-bullying initiatives, we must recognize that not all bullying is created equal. Maya Thompson's story forces us to confront the intersection of racism, sexism, and cultural discrimination that makes certain students particularly vulnerable to attacks that target not just their bodies, but their identities, their heritage, and their sense of belonging. The statistics remain sobering. Black girls are disproportionately targeted for harassment related to their natural hair, their cultural expression, and their very presence in predominantly white spaces. They face adultification bias that denies them the protection afforded to their white peers, and they encounter institutional responses that too often blame victims while protecting perpetrators. But Maya's story also demonstrates the transformative power of preparation, community support, and the refusal to accept others' definitions of who you are supposed to be. Her 8 years of martial arts training gave her tools that extended far beyond physical self-defense discipline, confidence, mental toughness, and the understanding that true strength emerges from within rather than from dominance over others. The changes at Westfield High School, the legal precedents established by her case, and the thousands of young women inspired by her example prove that individual acts of resistance can create systemic transformation when supported by strategic action and community solidarity. Most importantly, Maya's story reminds us that behind every quiet student, every transfer student, every young person who seems to prefer solitude, might be someone extraordinary, someone who has been preparing for years to show the world what they're truly capable of when circumstances demand it. The next time you witness someone being targeted for their difference, their culture, or their identity, remember the girl who transformed a chemical assault into a demonstration of unshakable strength. Remember that every young person deserves the opportunity to show their power, and that sometimes the most profound changes begin when someone decides they will no longer accept the unacceptable. They tried to pour bleach on her crown to diminish her light. Instead, they discovered that some lights burn too brightly to ever be extinguished.